Welcome back to the IBFP. Here's your host, Boxing News.
Welcome back, fight fans. Welcome back. Let's just dig right into it. Andy Ruiz Jr. is being used by the PBC as a puppet, and we're going to just break it down honestly and unbiased with just facts. And we first want to start off by saying, Andy Ruiz Jr. not being receptive and not being happy with only getting $9 million reportedly from the Anthony Joshua fight when he's making a tremendous amount of money. And a lot of people are very upset with that, saying, Andy Ruiz deserves more money. It's completely unfair. Well, we want to cover a few things. The first thing is, if Matchroom Boxing wants to give Andy Ruiz more money because they say, hey, it's worth putting on the show, without any arguing, without being sued, without having to sue Andy Ruiz, without anything, look, let's just give him a few more million and let's get this deal going. That's totally logical and that's plausible and that could happen. And in that case, if Matchroom, Eddie Hearn, and Anthony Joshua decides to give Andy Ruiz Jr. more money just to make sure the fight goes as planned without any issues, that's perfectly fine and acceptable. I think Andy Ruiz Jr. value has went up, and so he's more marketable than the $9 million. So I understand that, and hopefully this fight happens. Hopefully, if that's what it takes, then hopefully it happens. I would love to see that. Andy Ruiz Jr. does deserve more money, but we have to be honest and unbiased about the facts. And the facts is he signed a contract. And in the contract that he signed, he agreed to $9 million. So if if Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn decide not to give him, more than $9 million, they want to stick to that, then Andy Ruiz has to honor the contract that he signed. People are complaining and say, well, look how much of a gap that Anthony Joshua is making compared to Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz is only making $9 million, while Anthony Joshua is guaranteed $30 million plus. He could be looking at $70 million plus, $100 million plus. That's not Anthony Joshua's fault. He's the A side in all this. He's the star. He's the one who's bringing in all the attraction. If you have to be honest and unbiased. When Canelo Alvarez fights someone and there's a huge income disparity, Floyd Mayweather, Oscar De La Hoya, Manny Pacquiao, this is what A-side does. There's never going to be an even playing field when it comes to the money because the A-side keeps the majority. That's what happens. It's not about belts. It's about who fills seats in arenas. And Anthony Joshua is filling arenas and seats in the UK, America, and now in Saudi Arabia. So let's just break this down. And this is how the PBC is using Andy Ruiz Jr. as a puppet. So let's get into it. First, you have Adam Kownacki, who turned down an opportunity with, Anthony Joshua. And Adam Kownacki turned down that opportunity with Anthony Joshua just so he could fight Chris Arreola in a pointless and meaningless fight as a stepping stone to get to Deontay Wilder, a guy who has one belt, a guy who we won't make, millions and millions of dollars fighting. He would make that versus Anthony Joshua. So why would you turn Anthony Joshua down to fight Chris Arreola? That makes no sense. The PBC is protecting Adam Kownacki because they believe that he could be a future star in the heavyweight division. And then you look at Luis King Kong Ortiz. This guy turned down $5 million plus, and then the reports came out that he turned down over $7 million plus, and he was asking for $10 million to fight Anthony Joshua. That makes no sense. He priced himself out of the fight, and he used the same excuse that a lot of guys use at the PBC: money as a problem, money as a motivator. When we all know that he made around $500,000 for the Deontay Wilder fight, and at the end of the day, the fact that Anthony Joshua was offering you $5 to $7 million as a payday, that is a career high purse. You didn't get that facing Deontay Wilder. So everybody that wants to face Anthony Joshua wants to hit the lottery and be rich. And yet Anthony Joshua is still dishing out career high payday. Luis Ortiz ducked Anthony Joshua because he was protected by the PBC, and they used a convenient excuse as money. You notice the trend here. And then we get to Deontay Wilder, who rejects, a $100 million deal. There's reports that he rejected over a $120 million deal. This guy, this is more than his entire net worth, and he rejected that deal. Now the Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder fight will never be what it could have been, never be what it was, and he most likely will never get this type of opportunity to make this type of cash again. He's settling for pennies on the dollar fighting Dominic Breazeale, and the fact that Deontay Wilder is reaching for rematches with Luis Ortiz to trying to throw on pay-per-view to make some money, when he could have took guaranteed money fighting Anthony Joshua, over $100 million, generational wealth, an unheard of amount of contract. You see PBC and Showtime and Fox, they're not offering Deontay Wilder $100 million guaranteed. We have to be honest and unbiased. This is just another convenient excuse to duck Anthony Joshua, using money as a factor. And then you get to Andy Ruiz, and you see Andy Ruiz, he only got the fight, and this is reported by the UK Sun, that he only got the fight because he sent private messages to Eddie Hearn begging for his chance to fight Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua picked Andy Ruiz as a voluntary defense. He didn't have to pick Andy Ruiz. He could have picked anyone. They had other people. They could have picked an in-house fighter. They didn't have to cross the proverbial street and pick a PBC fighter, and yet they did. And Andy Ruiz was making $100,000 a fight, $200,000, $300,000. This guy was not making much money. He was to the point where Andy Ruiz was about to actually retire from boxing. He was not getting an opportunity. The PBC did not believe in him. That's why they threw him to Anthony Joshua, because they believed in Konaki, so they protected him. They believe in Ortiz, they protected him. Deontay Wilder, they protected him. But Andy Ruiz, they didn't believe in him, and he changed the game. And congratulations for Andy Ruiz for becoming a millionaire, for changing the game. But the PBC didn't protect him because they did not believe he could be this type of talent, and he proved them wrong. So you give Andy Ruiz all the credit in the world, but in life you don't always get what you deserve. You get what you have the leverage to negotiate. And if the point is Andy Ruiz has no leverage, he signed a contract, he can be sued. So it's up to Matchroom and Anthony Joshua, Eddie Hearn. If they decide to give Andy Ruiz more money just to keep him happy, then so be it. But if they decide not to, Andy Ruiz must fight Anthony Joshua, or it's a complete and utter duck, and he needs to be sued and stripped of all his belts, because that's what he signed. No one forced him to do it. He chose that. We're just going to go back over what Mike Coppinger says. And he went and, basically stated that, he's guaranteed $9 million to fight Anthony Joshua again. And this is Manny Robles came out and made statements to FightHype.com in regards to Andy Ruiz, and this is what he said. He said, "You haven't heard anything from Ruiz, and there's a reason why. You've got the promoter going out on a limb saying we're fighting on December 7th in Saudi, but you haven't heard anything from Andy. Everybody has to hold off and wait." First of all, that makes no sense. Why would we have to hold off and wait on Andy Ruiz when Andy Ruiz is contractually obligated to what Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua says? He signed that contract in the initial fight saying that Eddie Hearn gets to choose the date, the venue, and the amount that he's going to make in the second fight is already guaranteed. So regardless of what anyone thinks, even Manny Robles, it's already done. So if Andy Ruiz don't want to take the fight, he's completely ducking Anthony Joshua. It's not a business move. It's a move to try to avoid Anthony Joshua, try to price him out so they can take the belts and fight Deontay Wilder. If you don't see the writing on the wall, this is the PBC's tactics. This is what the PBC is looking to do. The PBC is using Andy Ruiz. They're advising Andy Ruiz. Eddie Hearn is advising Andy Ruiz just the same way he advised Luis Ortiz not to take the fight. The same way he advised, Deontay Wilder to turn down the fight. The same way he advised Adam Konaki to fight Chris Arreola instead of Anthony Joshua. Who does that? It makes no sense. This is bad advising, and this is what the PBC does. Manny Robles even came out again and made another statement to Fight Hype and says, "We were willing to fight anywhere." That's what a true champion does. If we got to go to Wales or Saudi, we've got to go by what the contract says. Obviously, we're going to give him the rematch because that's what we signed up for. So let's break this down. This is Andy Ruiz trainer, man from his camp, Manny Robles, and he says, we're willing to fight anywhere. Well, Andy Ruiz has been going back and forth. 1 minute he says, I won't fight in the UK. The next minute says, give me $50 million. The next minute says, I'm going to get cheated. So let's be honest and unbiased about this. You need to fight what the contract says, regardless of how you feel about it, because that's even what your own corner says. He says, this is a direct quote from Manny Robles, we've got to go by what the contract says. He says the fight's going to happen because that's what we signed up for. So he got to honor the contract. He got to do what the contract says. So why is there a debate? He needs to get on board and fight wherever Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn tells him, because that's what the contract says. Even his own corner admits it. See, you understand, we have to be honest and unbiased. Even Mike Coppinger is saying that, in Ruiz signed a contract for the original fight that contained a rematch clause that guaranteed him around $9 million for the rematch. That's what he signed. Nobody made him sign that. He was happy to sign that initial contract. He didn't, no one could foresee that the rematch being this bigger, or if there would even be a rematch. So Andy Ruiz, put on a great performance. He's in a great position. He's very wealthy at this point, but he wants to cash out, and I understand. And if Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua decides to give him more, that's at their discretion, and that would be great so we can see the fight. But Andy Ruiz shouldn't hold out. He shouldn't back out, because just like his own corner stated, he must honor and abide by the agreement. The PBC and Al Heyman is putting Andy Ruiz up there and jeopardizing his career to use him as a puppet to feed to Deontay Wilder. They do not believe in Andy Ruiz, and they're simply using him as a way to get the belts to Deontay Wilder. But once again, Unbiased as always, it's the IBFP. Please share, like, and you must absolutely subscribe.